My name is Trisha Potter, and I made my Cursillo weekend in June 2006 at Mary Mother of the Church Abbey in Richmond, Virginia. Our theme was Be Still and Know, and I sat at the table of the Sea of Conviction, but we renamed ourselves the Spiritual Divas. My definition of a spiritual diva is any woman who knows God comes before everyone and everything else. She is a prayer warrior who takes time to be still and know the Lord, so she is even more effective when spreading God's great mercy and being a sign of his living hope. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The best is yet to come. I know that's hard to believe, especially right after you've made your Cursillo weekend, but the longer you stick with your fine feathered Cursillo family, the clearer that will become. Our closest friends are people we have either met through and or brought to the Cursillo movement. I don't know about you, but I really need and want to be around people whose lives are centered on God, who are striving to do his will for them. People say that you need to have a community of believers to grow in faith. It's true. It's important to be around people who are where you'd like to be spiritually and find out what they're reading, what they've lived through, what their prayer lives are like, who their spiritual companions are, and learn as much as you can from them. I like to spend time in prayer and know that it's important, but honestly, sometimes I'm a little nervous to be still and listen to God. Sometimes he tells me things I'd rather not say, do, write, or even think about. Does that ever happen to you? I'm guessing that most of you are familiar with the Footprints in the Sand poem. Aspects of my faith journey are nicely alluded to in the first two frames of a chainsaw suit comic strip by Chris Straub called Footprints in the Sand, Part 1. In the first frame, Jesus has his arm around someone and they're both smiling, and it says, "My child, I never left you. Those places with one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you." The second frame, Jesus is pointing, and he no longer has his arm around the person, and they both look very serious. That long groove over there is when I dragged you for a while. That's pretty much how I feel my relationship goes with God. There are some times when I feel like he's carrying me and other times where I'm being dragged, kicking and screaming. I have inspirations, things that come easily, elicit joy, energy, and excitement, and then there are what I call God nudges. It's not always an outright say this or do this, though I've gotten those too. It may be a gentle nudge to examine an area of my life where I've become complacent, laxed, or outright lazy. It's always an invitation, not a threat or demand. Some of the biggest transformations and miracles that have occurred in my life, I thought would never happen. Here are 3 things I once believed would never happen. 1. Kevin, my longtime boyfriend and now husband of many years, would never return to the Catholic faith in which he was raised and make it a priority in his life. When we became friends and started dating, he wanted nothing to do with the church, and he thought he should have the first place spot in my heart, but I'd already given that to God. The second, I would never, ever nanny for anyone again. I was far too devastated when I stopped taking care of my 2 little guys in August 2006 to risk that level of love, attachment, and ultimately loss. 3, I would never completely reconcile or have a close relationship with my dad. He gave me some of the deepest scars I have, and I couldn't ever see trusting him enough or believing that my heart could be changed enough to let him back into my life. Perhaps you've heard the Cursillo motto, make a friend, be a friend, bring your friend to Christ. When Kevin and I were dating, I attempted this method of evangelization, which is very effective, with one slight variation. I had made a friend, was being a friend, and was doing everything I could to drag my boyfriend to Christ. I learned eventually that only God can transform people's hearts and minds. We can be open to Him working in and through us to draw others closer to Him, but we can't make that conversion happen of our own volition. Believe me, I've tried. I was and am most interested in Kevin having a direct and intimate relationship with God because I knew then, as I know now, that the love I give will never be as pure, complete, unconditional, or limitless as the love God gives. I will not always have the right answers or know the ultimate truth, but God does, so that's who you should ask. These two short prayers I wrote in my prayer journal many years ago pretty much sum up my relationship with God. Lord, plant your will in my heart and make it my deepest desire and most fervent longing. And you, Lord, are all I have, and you give me all I need. My future is in your hands. Lord, I pray for your will. God has granted those prayers. Whenever I get lost or confused about what I should do, I may stress over it, talk about it with friends, write about it, but eventually I get the brilliant idea to pray about it. Sooner or later, in God's time, certainly not mine, clarity comes. Taking time in prayer and study to listen to the Lord increases our awareness that God loves us and wants to love others through us. We need to be rejuvenated by the source of all love if we are ever going to know and therefore be able to live out those most important of all commandments from the Gospels. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Real love requires sacrifice, selflessness, and a commitment to the overall well-being of others. It's not always neat, pretty, or easy to love others. Christ showed us that during his time on earth, and certainly through his passion and death on the cross. Writing is part of what God wants me to do, one aspect of how he encourages me to pray, discern, and share the faith with others. Text messages, Facebook posts and chats, handwritten letters, epic linked emails, greeting cards, and blog posts are the main ways I share with others and live out my vocation as a writer. Kevin's support and God's guidance are the reasons I've been able to work with children and devote time to prayer, reading, and writing instead of what might be a more ideal job in the financial and worldly sense. He is extremely supportive of my prayer and writing efforts, especially of my blog, which is called Prince of Grace. My husband and I don't have any children of our own, and it's quite possible we may never be able to do so, but we both really love kids. So I've done a great deal of work that is involved taking care of and teaching them. As I said, after I stopped nannying for my two little guys, as I call them, in August 2006, I was never, ever going to nanny again. God had much better plans. I began taking care of the daughter of a close family friend when she was just a baby. A couple years after taking care of this one singular sensation, her twin sisters, who had previously been referred to as babies in pants, arrived on the scene. Once their mom's maternity leave was over, I was the busy nanny of a toddler and two infants 3 to 4 days a week. Looking back, I sometimes wonder how I managed it even for 10-hour increments. The oldest, Vivi, is now 5, and her twin sisters, Livia and Sophia, turned 3 in May. Kevin and I are the twins' godparents. My husband and I love all 3 girls as if they were our own. As you can imagine, I had many opportunities to carry out the corporal and spiritual works of mercy while taking care of young children. It was part of my job/ministry each day to feed the famished, give drink to the parched, cover bare bottoms, admonish the troublemaker, instruct the impulsive, comfort the crying, bear wrongs and potty accidents patiently, forgive and tend to all boo-boos, as well as to pray for the living as they attempt to do each other in. A year ago December, God nudged me again. He gave me the courage and strength to do something I could not have managed or been able to do peacefully without his guidance and grace. He told me it was time to move on. It didn't make sense to me or to Kevin. I was the one with the steady income when Kevin had been out of work for 6 months. Why would I stop working for a family we love and leave what I know to risk not making ends meet? Because God made it clear to me it was time. How did I know? I prayed about it. And as I said, I was given strength, courage, and peace to do something I didn't think I could grow through it with. I gave them 5 weeks' notice so they'd have ample time to look for another child care provider. Kevin and I are still very much involved in their lives and get to see them regularly. Remember, I believed I would never have a really good relationship with my dad? Well, once again, God had much better plans. In the fall of 2006, I had lunch out with my dad, just the two of us. God had nudged me to reach out to him. That was the humble beginning of one of the biggest transformations and reconciliations in my life. Not only did my dad and I reconcile, but I was one of his primary caregivers in the last 3 years of his life when he was in hospice care. I'd spend time with him, get his groceries, run errands, do the mass readings, and bring him Holy Communion each week when he was too sick to go out or do much of anything on his own. My mom and I were with him when he took his last breath on August 10, 2009, at the age of 54. If you had told me 10 years ago that I would ever completely reconcile and develop a truly loving relationship with the man who gave me the deepest scars I have, as well as life, I wouldn't have believed you. Now it's clear to me, God took that never and had something infinitely better in mind. In the midst of our daily lives, we're called to be a source of love, peace, calm, joy, mercy, and hope for other people. Why? Because it's what Jesus would do, and Mary too. The last recorded words of the Blessed Mother in the Bible apply to each and every one of us. Does anyone know what those last 5 words of wisdom were? It's from John chapter 2, verse 5. Do whatever he tells you. We can't offer true love and charity to others without giving something of ourselves. Oftentimes, suffering, struggle, and resistance are necessary elements we face internally or externally when we commit to being there for and with someone. All of us have friends and family. All of us know how to care for and about other people. The most valuable aspects of life we can share with others are those that stem from a close relationship with Christ. Participation in the sacraments, accepting God's grace, prayer, study, and community involvement. We need each of these to help us be better vessels for God's unconditional love, abundant joy, great mercy, and living hope. I will end this with a few discussion questions, suggestions for small groups. Has God turned any of your nevers into betters? If so, explain. What are you passionate about? And how can you share that to glorify God? If you'd like to read more about how God has been working in my life and those of my family and friends, check out my blog, Prince of Grace, Prints of Grace. Thank you.